Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cold Email Podcast. Today I'm joined by Wesley, the co-founder of SciMate. Wesley, really appreciate you taking the time to be here today, man.
No, absolutely. Pleasure is mine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, just for everyone watching, Wesley has a pretty unique background for someone running a lead gen agency. Before starting SciMate, he actually held engineering roles at Apple, Twitter, and Experian. So, he then took that engineering perspective, applied it to his lead gen agency, and then since then, the agency has crossed seven figures, working with tech startups and SaaS companies, including companies from Y Combinator and also Techstars. So, on this episode, we're just going to discuss how Wesley's engineering background changes the way that he approaches cold email, what building go-to-market systems looks like for tech companies, the role of psychology and copywriting in getting people to respond to your cold emails, a couple of systems and processes that Wesley uses behind his successful campaigns, and also what you need to be spending your time on to run successful campaigns in 2026. So before we dive in, Wesley, could you just give everyone watching a quick intro around who you are and what you do at SciMate?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, first of all, thank you for that introduction. This is a lot of topic we're gonna go over today, but it will be a fun one. I promise to give you a lot of sauce in this episode. But yeah, a bit of background about me. I actually study what we call computer science, basically software engineering in university. And right after college, so as a matter of fact, when I was in college, that's when I started working as a software engineer. And I think I was doing that for maybe about 8 or 9 years. And during that time, I also had a small startup as well. It's more like a side project that my friend and I we were doing together. And I think that was when I first got exposed to the whole, go-to-market world. And I think that was like late 2021, early 2022. Shut it down shortly, sold to a competitor for, maybe a tickets to to Southeast Asia. So nothing like a crazy exit. Yeah, and right after that, we started SciMate. And fun fact, SciMate was originally a QA automation agency. So we do automation in terms of quality assurance for all the tech startups. And in late 2023, that's when we pivot into a cold email agency, right? Building processes, system, but focus specifically on the marketing side of things, the top of funnel side of things. And yeah, here we are. We're one of the leading go-to-market cold email space in the cold email space in North America, serving a little bit over like 120, 130 clients at this point.
Amazing, amazing. So you went from a computer science degree and also an engineering background from Twitter, Apple, and Experian to running a lead gen agency. And obviously, as you said, there were a couple of steps in between when you launched and sold your other startup as well. But what actually made you want to make that jump into running a lead gen agency?
So when I was in university, the reason why I fell in love with software engineering is because I get to build cool stuff, right? And I think all the software engineers listen to the podcast can relate to this. But when you get a actual software engineer roles, not many of us get to build cool stuff. I think out of like the whole 7 days in a week, maybe one day you get to build stuff, but for the rest of the days in a week, all you do is look into existing code and just fix stuff, broken stuff that was built by someone else, or just to make the improvement from it. And that was the whole reason why or like I and my buddy, we started the startup back then, just so that we can build things, right? And I don't know, like I just had a I was a very passionate person when it comes to building things since I was a younger age, right? So decided to go all in on building my business, just basically betting on myself. I mean, I'm also a type of person who never really like working for somebody, really, right? I think I value freedom a lot more than anything else. So just being able to get to build while experiencing the freedom, I think that was what attracted me to start my own thing, the agency, the startup that I had in the past. Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest mindset I had when I made the jump.
And then moving into lead gen, moving into that space with the background that you have, how do you think that engineering perspective and having that dev mindset actually changed the way that you approach building systems in this specific space and how you approach cold email?
The reason why I wanted to pivot the agency to doing cold email and lead gen is, so to take a step back, for me, I wanted to do that because it's more like a two bird in one stone type deal, right? Like I need to figure out a way to find myself customers, and I wanted to learn the skill set to be able to help other customers. Well, it's the same skill set that I learned, apply for myself and do it for the other customers. And along the way, I listened to a lot of like CEO podcasts and things like that. And one thing that I noticed is everybody talk about system. It's about system, system, system. And I had a lot of, thankfully I have a lot of opportunities to really have one-on-one conversations with other founders who are at a bigger level than where we are now. And yeah, all they really talk about is system, system, system. And one thing that I learned is everybody is very, how do you say this? They they are very like they stuck with the system, right? They make that their primary goal, like whatever direction they want to go with, whether it's finance, whether it's top of funnel, cold email, marketing, they have to follow a process, right? And I think one thing that intrigued me back in the day was when I listened to your podcast, and I forgot who it was. The podcast were the guest was basically saying like, oh yeah, I run like like 12, 20 companies, and not in like the investor type thing, but like he was actually like the CEO of like a bunch of other companies. And I was just like how are you able to run so many companies where I'm right here, struggle with one business? And digging deeper into that, it's all about system and processes, right? So I think that I took that challenge to the heart, and I basically told myself, how do I build a system? How do I build processes that allow me to scale the agency, that allow to scale my own go-to-market, my other clients go to market, cold email, all that kind of stuff. And I think just having the obsessive personality of wanting to build things in general was really helping me in terms of, like building all the system and processes for my own internal company and for other people as well. So I think that's basically where I derive the passion from.
All right, amazing. And before we get into systems, because I have a lot of questions about the systems that you are building, both for yourself and for your clients, but we've mentioned the term go-to-market a couple of times already in this podcast. Go-to-market engineering. It's something that we're seeing more and more of in the space right now. A lot of people are posting about go-to-market tech stacks and anything to do with go-to-market engineering online. And you've talked about go-to-market engineering being two separate things. We have go-to-market and we also have engineering. So first of all, in your opinion, what is go-to-market engineering and why do you break it down into two different things?
I thought about it quite a bit, right? Let me ask you this. How many agencies out there that call themselves go-to-market agency, but when you start working with them, it's just cold email? That's a lot.
Yeah, I would say that the majority of them, for sure.
Exactly. I would say the reason why we call ourselves a cold email agency, because we don't want to sort of like confuse other people about that terminology. I honestly think why people have this mix between go-to-market and cold email is because go-to-market means simple. You take your product to the market, right? You're trying to find the right market. So you have to do a bunch of tests. You might have to, talk to a lot of customers to see which market resonate with your product. You take the product to the market. That's all what go-to-market is. Now, go-to-market, in my honest opinion, is just a fancier word of marketing, right? And marketing or top of funnel, it's the same thing. And in terms of marketing or top of funnel, there really are, a few things you could really do, right? You could, if you read like Alexan Zartarian's book, this is only, like talk to people that so warm intro, running ads, doing content, or running cold outreach, right? Let's go over all of them. So doing warm intro, like how many people you possibly know to be able to bring on as customers, right? So that's probably not the best option for go-to-market. Second is ads, right? If you're a startup, how much fun do you have to be able to run ads, right? Like even if let's say you're bootstrapped as a company, like do you have, 2K, 3K, 4K every single month just to drop on ads to test, right? So the answer is probably not. And last is content. You could start building the content, but everybody knows content is a long-term game, right? Either SEO or YouTube, whatever it might be. That's going to take time for people it will pay off in the long run, but it's going to take time for you to get the initial customer coming in, right? So really the only other options is really cold outreach, right? Cold outreach is very, I would say, affordable, right? Not cheap, right? Nowadays with all these new tools, but I would say affordable compared to other channels, right? It allows you to reach targeted audience in a very, very, very high volume, right? So I think honestly, that's the reason why there's a lot of mixed up between cold email, cold outreach versus go-to-market. It's just because it's the one channel that makes the most sense when it comes to go-to-market. Now, go-to-market has a lot of different components to it, right? There's the engineering, there's the lead data you have to build. On top of that, there's also the creative side of it as well, right? And what's interesting enough is creative is something that you just cannot force yourself to learn, right? Like you can study the framework, but if you're not a creative person, then there's just no way for you to be creative. And this is Basically, I'm talking about copywriting. I'm talking about positioning and strategy and offers, all that kind of stuff, right? That's when I think a lot of people added the terminology engineering to the end of it to basically take the creative aspect out of go-to-market, right? So these are the specialties where folks are trying to, they build workflows in Clay, they build processes, they build systems that be able to scrape data, whatever it might be, right? While not having to focus so much on the creative aspect of it, right? So I think that's the one thing, the difference between go-to-market, cold email, and go-to-market engineering.
Interesting. And do you feel like, based on where the cold email space is today, do you feel like the engineering aspect of go-to-market is genuinely more important than the creative part of go-to-market when it comes to seeing results from your cold email campaigns?
I think there's a little bit of both. Like, you just have to be good at both, to be honest. Your engineering has to be on point. Like, your targeting, your lead list, your data has to be, you have to be talking to the right people. So that's one thing, right? But at the same time, if you're reaching out to the right people, but if your messaging is not resonating, it's not great, then I don't think it's not going to work. Now, you can probably make the argument that if you have an amazing product, something that nobody has on the market before, and you're reaching out to the right people, doesn't matter what your language is like, your copy is like, your messaging will be like. I think that could work, right? Having the right targeting with a bad copy. But I don't think that's the case for most companies nowadays, right? Especially with like AI agents that can, spin up a software over the weekend, right? Sooner or later, you're going to have a competitor, right? So I think this is where, like the idea, the principle of like market awareness and market sophistication comes in, right? At some point where the market is saturated with similar products, and when competitors start to flood into the space, I think this one you have to rely to other things like branding or creative and copywriting to really, really being able to survive in that app.
All right. So that's why it's then a mixture of both. You basically need both components of that. So you at SciMate, you guys primarily work with software companies, early stage startups. Is there something about running cold email campaigns for those companies that is different to running cold email campaigns for any other kind of B2B business, agencies, professional services firms?
Man, you're putting me on the spot here. I'll be honest with you. We had a lot of discussion internally. Actually, we'll primarily focus on B2B tech startups and software companies. But to be honest with you, the best customers that we had is actually on the other side of the spectrum. It's the services, the non-software, the non-tech people. For us, at least, right? For startups, we have the playbook, we have the crack. But I think that the issue with startups is it's just a lot of uncertainties. They don't have a lot of cash flow, right? They don't have the operational, like I kid you not, like I can even send you a screenshot today from a customer who literally left us last month because they say something like, they literally say like, look, you guys brought us too many deals, and unfortunately we have to focus on closing the ones that we brought in, and we have to hire additional account executives. So unfortunately we have to pause the campaign for maybe like 3-4 months, right? And most of the time, like when they say that, to me, just like the internal operation is just something screwed up, right? Most time they might come back. I hope they come back because they've been a client for us for like a year and like 6 months already. Kind of put it into a situation where you do a bad job and the clients leave, and you do an amazing job and the clients still leave. So what should we do? Right? With the other space, with the services space, it's always a different story. I think to us, we work with like clients. Like we actually have a bunch of clients where, let's give you some example. They like one of the largest like delivery circle network in the US, and like that kind of services. I think because they already have the operations, they know how to scale, right? We bring in as many customers as they want, they can handle it. Right? I think those are the type of clients that we love working with. So even though yes, we do specialize in working with B2B tech company and startups, man, I'll tell you right now that when we get a service client coming in, those are the one that we love working with the most, just because of the uncertainty in the startup space,
Yeah. And when you're looking at a potential client, a potential business, and you're analyzing and you're assessing whether they would be a good fit for cold email, what are you actually looking at? Do you feel like there's any boxes that these companies need to tick, maybe on a business level, before they are actually considered a good fit for cold email?
Yeah. I talk about two things for you. So the first thing is not necessarily just about cold email, but just marketing in general. So my number one rule of thumb is if somebody who doesn't have like a sales process in place, we don't work with them. Or we have additional services that can help them build out the sales process, right? And some key question for me to ask usually is like, hey, do you have like a Calendly setup, or do you have any like like calendar software that you use? And they're like, oh no. Then it's kind of tell me like, okay, well, if we have all these leads coming in, how are you gonna meet them? And they're like, I don't know. How are you gonna nurture them? Well, I'm not sure, right? I think that's when we either say no, or we trying to sell them like an upsell package, which most of the time they can't afford it. So that's one thing I would say is, like, before you look into any marketing channels, look into your sales process first. Like, how do you create a customer journey to go from the initial contact all the way into a closed deal, all the way into the fulfillment process, right? Whether it's a software, whatever it might be. And it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It doesn't have to be amazing, because you could optimize it as we go. And I think that's one of the most important principle that I learned from being a software engineer is you're not gonna get like the first like when you first build something the first time, it's not gonna be amazing, right? But the idea is you need to constantly optimizing it. You need to have some sort of feedback loop to improve it over time. So that's one thing. Before you look into any marketing, make sure you have a sales process in place. Now, with cold email by itself, I would say if you are a good enough strategist, you could really make cold email work for any B2B services, right? There are some sweet spots that you could maybe look into, but if you really know how to position yourself, you have a good offer. I've seen it work for like any kind of industry, right? Obviously, some advantage you might have when it comes to cold email is obviously things like your TAM, right? If you have a big data list, if you work with like, let's say, every single chiropractors in the US, right, then that's probably a good indication that cold email might work for you, right? That's a terminology called product market fit, right? If you have product market fit, you know your target audience, and that could work too, right? But quite frankly, I honestly think the term go to market is kind of contradicting with product market fit, right? Like, how are you gonna quote unquote go to market for the first time if you already have product market fit? If you know what I'm saying, right? So there are a couple of, I guess, advantage for cold email if you have those things. But I've seen clients with small time, very specific niche that we're able to crack. I've seen client wins for something like cybersecurity, where the offer is very very commoditized, I would say. But yeah, like if you're good enough as a strategist, you can make cold email work for any B2B company.
And when you think about a go-to-market strategy or cold email strategy, like what is the first thing that comes to mind? Like what exactly are the components of a strategy?
When it comes to cold email, the first thing we do is get the infrastructure out of the way first. Infrastructure, I won't talk so much about warm up and all that kind of stuff, because I know there's a lot of resources out there already. But get that out of the way, right? Just so that you have a setup ready to go whenever you're ready to launch cold email. So knock that out of the way. Strategy is something that we spend more time thinking about. I would say yes, offer is one thing, but I would say positioning is also something that we try to help a customer really like define where they want to stand in the market as well, right? So offer and positioning to me, same but different, right? Offer is almost of like an exchange, right? To me, when someone asks me like what how do you define offer? To me, it's like an exchange, right? Like you give me something and I will give you something else in return, right? If you're an employee and you come up to your boss and you ask for a promotion, you come up for your boss, you want to ask for PTO, that is an exchange and that is an offer. And that's what something I coach my team, that you always need to think your day-to-day operation, your day-to-day role as an offer perspective, right? You come up to me, you ask for a promotion, you ask for PTO. What do you need to give me in exchange for me to say yes? Right? So that's what an offer is. Positioning is different. Positioning has to do a lot with maybe like authority. Positioning has to do a lot with where you stand in the market, right? So let's take an example. If I'm an employee and I go up to my boss and I say, hey, I want to request for a PTO. Here's my offer. Before I go on my vacation, my PTO, I'll finish all the client work. I'll tell the clients that I'll be on PTO for 2 days. I'll do everything. And as a matter of fact, when I come back, I'll bring the whole team a gift just to increase the team morale, right? So everything will be settled when I'm gone. There will be no chaos. And when I come back, I have more gift for the team. It's a great offer. Obviously, as a boss, I'm going to say, like, cool, that's amazing. Go on your PTO, right? Positioning is different. Positioning is, let's say somebody in my team, and let's say they are my senior, I don't know, in my senior leadership team, my senior executive team. They come to me and it's like, Wesley, I'm the director of, I don't know, marketing, and you need me for the business to survive. I want to take 2 days off. I don't care what you say, I'm taking a day off, right? I'll be like, man, you've done so much for us. I can't say no to you, right? Like, you don't even need an offer for that, right? So that's the position that I'm talking about. So to be able to position the product where they want to stand in the market, I think to me, in a sense, kind of go hand in hand with the offer itself, right? And I think that's a misconception where they are the same thing, but in my opinion, they are kind of different, right? Same concept, but a little bit different.
And when you think about a cold email offer, you hear the term front end offer, a make money offer, an intro offer, whatever you want to call it. When you're building offers for cold email, what exactly makes a good offer? Especially as markets are getting more sophisticated, there's more skepticism in the market. How do you actually differentiate yourself using your offer?
I think this is where market awareness and market sophistication comes into place. It really, to make the offer works, it really depends on how aware your market is and how sophisticated they are, right? So the number one thing we always trying to start with is the problem, the pain, right? And to me, it even just like beyond cold email, but your company will fail, and I'm sorry, it will fail if you're not solving a problem that people give a shit about, right? I think that's one thing that I see a lot in founders, and quite frankly, some of my customers as well. To me, it's like, why are you building this product? Like, nobody really cares about it, right? Like, you might think that people do. Like for example, this is not one of my clients, but like I know a lot of friends, right? They back in, like my university day, what they try to do is they trying to build like a Tinder like a dating app like for restaurant, like a swipe left or right depending on like what food you want to choose today, right? Yeah, sure, you can choose a problem. Like the problem you're trying to solve is, help other people figure out what food place they want to go next, right? But really, like, why is there no product like that in the market yet? Well, because I can tell you now that people are trying to build it and no one cares about it, right? So the first thing we always trying to figure out is, does your market really cares about your product? Does the market, are you actually solving a problem, a pain point that people cares about, right? You can't be solving a pain that you think is a big pain, but in reality, it's just a small pain. I would say it's the first thing. Once you have that, again, going back to the idea of market sophistication and market awareness, depending on how saturated your market is, right? Just to give it like a very simple terminology. For example, obviously the market has the lead generation pain, right? Every business want more leads, every business want more sales, every business want to make more money, right? It's just simple truth. But how many market or products out there that could do the same thing, right? If you're going up to somebody and you say, I can help you increase your revenue by XYZ, okay, well, get in line, buddy, because every single day I get about 25 emails from 25 different products and services that say the exact same thing, right? When you say I can help you bring more leads, get more revenue, think about it. You're competing with other cold email agency in the space. You're competing with other ad agency in the space. You're competing with other content agency. You compete with all these different adjacent agencies. As a matter of fact, you're also competing with software companies like HeyReach also have, like the same value propositions, like, or sequencing tool like Smartly, Instantly, whatever it might be, right? Their value proposition is like, hey, do this, sign up to your software and you can make more money. So that's would be the second step. To be able to position yourself to be stand out in a very saturated market is something that we need to help the client crack if, let's say, they are in a market where the sophistication level is already very high.
Do you think that it's still possible to see results if you don't treat the offer as an exchange? So if you're just sending an email to someone, you're asking for something, do you think it's still possible to see results, or do you always need to think about what kind of free value do I need to give the prospects? How can I show them a bit of the piece of the pie of what it's going to look like if they do decide to work with us?
100%. So I think this is where positioning come into place, right? I'll give you an example of positioning, and if you're running this kind of agency, you can steal my framework as well. So, does free gift work? Yes, absolutely, right? So what free gifts, or like lead magnet is what they call it in the space. What it does is it reduces the risk for the buyer before they maybe like sign up for the product, they learn more information, right? But obviously you're also risking something like, hey, you're sending all this information to them and maybe it's too much information, they don't care about information, then it just doesn't work, right? Like if you I think with lead magnet and free stuff, it works if your goal is to simply gauge if there's an interest in the market. if that makes sense. I rarely see any kind of lead magnet actually convert, to an actual paying customer. Right now, maybe I could be wrong. Like maybe there's a product out there. I know there's a lot of other agencies who are great at building lead magnets, and those maybe perhaps have been able to crack that. But with lead magnet to me, like, hey, if you want to go after like maybe another region, another market to see if they'd be interested in the product, yeah, as you send a free value, low friction, reduce the risk, and see if they're interested, right? To gauge the attention before you reverse engineer and find an offer that is fit for them, right? Now, can I make it work in a very saturated market? And I think our short answer is obviously yes. But I think this is where positioning comes in, right? And one example that I love telling people, and I say this because I actually bought the service. I got bought into it. So I know it works for me. I'm a very skeptical person, right? And I bought this actually when I was very early on in the agency space. I didn't like have that much revenue company. I still bought it, right? Some might call it a dumb decision, but it works for me. So it was actually for a PR agency. So PR agency, what they do is, well, there's a lot of direction with PR, right? But one primary thing that most PR agencies do is publication, right? They help you publish your name under the newspaper like Yahoo News or Entrepreneur or Forbes, whatever it might be, right? Now, obviously, you do a bunch of cold email. You're like, I can help you increase your revenue. I can help you get more attraction, blah, 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 right? It's not going to work. But the way that I was sold to is because this guy was so clever at his positioning. So when he sent me a cold email, he was basically saying something like, hey, Wesley, there's a open position on the Forbes magazine, and I think you'll be a very much a good fit for it. And I would love to do a 30 minutes interview with you to make sure that Forbes, like really like about your background because they don't accept anybody. And if it makes sense, I will fill in that spot in Forbes for you. So you see right here, very similar to the example I said earlier about how if you're an employee and you have all the authority, you tell them like, I'm going PTO. It is very the same idea, right? They pitch me the exact same service. I can help you to be on like all these publications, right? But to me, the reason I bought it is because it was like, whoa, this guy, like Forbes wants me, right? This is crazy. Like I get to be on Forbes, right? So that's the example of how a good position, like how you position yourself can really win in the market, especially a saturated market, right? So yeah, I think hopefully that clears up on like the difference between offers and positioning, right? Offers is about an exchange, the pain point, how to reduce risk for your customers, all that kind of stuff. It does work, don't get me wrong. But nowadays, if a lot of products are going to the market with the whole world of AI, and if it becomes more and more saturated, you might have to refer to positioning to be able to sell your products out there.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you when it comes to giving away a free lead magnet, which intuitively seems like, I'm going to show someone what it looks like to work with me. This is definitely going to work. But then you also tend to attract the kind of people who are interested in the free value, but just might not want to become a paying customer. And we actually had that. We literally got a response today where we gave a free lead magnet to someone on behalf of a client. And the guy literally responded saying, yes, if there's no commitment involved. So you tend to get the people who literally do not want to commit, but they do want the free value. So then you need to obviously qualify those prospects and see how you're going to turn them into paying clients.
Yes, exactly.
So where does persuasion and copywriting skills, where do those come in when it comes to obviously like writing your scripts, you're building an offer, you're thinking about positioning and your market sophistication. And I've also heard you saying that copywriting, buyer psychology, they are some of the most underrated parts of cold email. So what do you mean by that? And how do you apply psychology to your copywriting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, psychology is a variety of, there's like a spectrum of, psychology that we can go into. Quite frankly, I'm very interested in psychology, man. Like I was telling my fiance, like at some point in the future, when everything's done deal, I want to go study psychology and get a degree, like a doctorate degree in psychology, just for the sake of being called a doctor in psychology. Yeah, so I had a lot of interest in psychology, to be honest with you. A few simple quote unquote psychology when it comes to copywriting that I can maybe just share. And see the same practice everybody preach is, write your copy simple, don't overcomplicate your product, keep it short, keep it simple, keep it conversational, right? Because it's the same idea, right? With cold traffic, you're reaching out to somebody for the first time, right? And I think this is the interesting part. always have the expectation that people don't know you, right? And you're listening to this, you might be thinking like, well, duh, obviously, but trust me, like I've worked with customers who are again, like one of the largest company in that space, right? And we still have to tell people who we are, right? Like the world is big, right? Like just expect nobody knows you, right? I really like to think copywriting as dating. Like, look, are you gonna go up to somebody for the first time at the club and invite them to your house? Probably not, right? And it's the same idea with like inviting somebody, like to a car, right away, right? Now, can you make it happen on the first day? Probably, yeah. But it needs to take a little bit of, like conversation. It needs to take a little bit of, get to know each other before I can bring you back home. If that makes sense, right? Like go to the club tomorrow and be like, sup girl, wanna go back to my house? I'm gonna slap you in the face, right? But hey, let me buy you a drink. Like, what you do for work? Oh wow. Oh, like, oh, let me get you Instagram. Oh, you wanna hang out after that kind of stuff? Then it might work, right? Look at us. We're giving people free dating advice. I think you should charge people for the episode.
We should. We should.
But same idea for cold email, right? Everybody want a meeting, and I think that's where cold email come into place as well. Cold email is very powerful to just skip all these funnel. You have to go through this, go on a landing page, click this, watch this video, book a call, right? We can skip all of that and get them to the meeting, but you have to do it in a strategic way, right? You have to be creative in your copy. You have to make it friendly. You have to make it sounds like, hey, I just want to get to know you, see if this works for you, see if it's a good fit before you invite them into a call. If that makes sense. So I think that's where the principle of copywriting, like keep it simple, keep it straightforward, like make it conversational comes in. Now we can go into a bit of an advanced psychology as well. And this is what I learned when I was a software engineer at Apple, actually. When you go to the Apple store, one thing you would notice is go to the laptop section and you will see that all the laptops are being positioned in the exact same angle. Right? It's like a little bit like less than 90 degrees, like 75-degree angle or something like that, right? And they do that for a purpose. They do that so that when a buyer goes into the Apple store and they look at the laptop, they adjust the screen just so that it's easier for them to see, right? Because they purposely position the laptop so that it's uncomfortable for the people to see. And when you adjust the screen, the psychology is they found that the more people interact with the product, the more likely they will buy. So the whole goal of them making the laptop at the weird position is just so that people can touch it, so that more people can buy, right? And that's a very interesting psychology. And we took that into cold email as well, right? The more people respond to your email, the more they will convert, the more they will buy, right? So the goal for you is not to get the meeting right off the bat. The goal is not to send the calendar link on the very first email. The goal is, just get them to have a conversation with you and then set a meeting.
That's super interesting. And you're going to make me go to the Apple store right now and just go and check all the laptops. Because as you were describing that story, I was just thinking about all the times that I went to the Apple store, and specifically because I just bought a new laptop recently. I remember like the process of wanting to engage with the product. And the more you start typing on the keyboard and checking all the settings and moving the screen where you want it, you start to feel like the product is yours, hence increasing the chances of you actually making the purchase.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to move a bit into systems now as well. So for someone who might be watching who doesn't have your background, what exactly is a system? When you think of a system, what is a system? And specifically in the context of cold email.
So systems or processes is a two terminologies that people use, like back to back. To me, systems, if I were to explain it in like a very, very simple terms, it's just step-by-step instruction. If this, do this. If that, do that. You just have to be very strict with it, right? And this can come with like a lot of like different type of systems, right? So for example, like PTO system, for example, I keep mentioning PTO, but like, hey, if somebody wants to, like request for some time off, what do you do? Right? You fill this form, the form goes to the manager approve it, it goes to HR put it in the system, and then they go to PTO, right? Now, the if this and that component is this. If they apply for the PTO and if they don't have enough PTO day, right, then there'll be a rejection, right? Or they apply for PTO, but some other circumstances are going on. Like let's say they have a client, for example, right? They have to focus on the work, then maybe the approval might have to, or like the request had to be questioned right before an approval was given. Right. So that's system and processes. And you can take that to every aspect of your business. One thing that I heard from somebody, I forgot who it was, and it's kind of obvious too, but the saying is you need to have systems in your business because you create system, so system can run your business and you run the system. And if you don't have system, the business will run you. And I like to apply that principle to every single aspect of the current agency. And especially when it comes to cold email, it's the same thing, right? If you don't have a system in place, right, then the whole, like marketing channel is going to run over you. And all you're going to do all day is to, like dealing with files coming in, right? Maybe the lead list is not working. You're talking to the wrong people, a bunch of messages reply coming in. People are not interested, all that kind of stuff, right? People build systems to make things less chaotic, right? For the lack of word, all right? And systems has to be simple as much as you can make it. So to me, that's this, when it comes to, I think to me, when I build system, I start with that mindset. So I try to see if I can solve that issue, right? Like how can I send like millions of cold emails a month, right? Without landing in spam? Like what are some of the processes that I have to build? Like we might have to have like layers. We have to work with a bunch of different vendors who are the right vendors. We need to have like a good data set. We have to go to this database, that database, right? So you see how there's a lot of chaotic component coming in. So I sit down and I say, okay, let's make it a straightforward process. For infrastructure, do this, go with this vendor and go with that vendor for backup. For data, do this. For copywriting, do this. Different aspect, do all of that stuff, right? And then I constantly think about how can I make it simpler, right? How can I dumb that down a little bit? How can I make my process a bit more efficient, right? And I think this is where I introduce a lot of AI into my components, right? So, okay, all of this replies coming in. Where does AI come into place? Can I build an agent that maybe like notify me when there's a message? Can I build an agent that, would understand what the product is about and reply for me, right? And maybe I try that and it doesn't work out. And I say, okay, well, can I make the agent send me a few replies option? And all I have to do is click a button to select the reply that I want to send out to the leads who are interested in my product. And it would just use that reply instead. So you see what I do right here, right? I try to create a system that make it more efficient for me, that I don't have to go into like Smartly or Instantly and all this sequencing tool every single day to, look what the reply is, but it's right there in front of me, right? And all I have to do is to look the option that is presented and click a button for it to send that reply to me, right? And over time, obviously, it might work, it might not, right? If it works, great. But that's the whole thing about optimization, right? It might not work the first time, right? It might be sending some weird messages, right? So that's when you have to go into the AI and tell it's like, hey, say this instead of that, all that kind of stuff. So it does come with a lot of optimization when it comes to building system. But our mindset when it comes to building system or processes at the agency is let's try by solving the problem first. Let's see how we do that manually first, right? Cool. How do we automate it, right? Cool. It's automated. Is it good? It's not good? Okay, let's go optimize it. Okay, is it good now? It's good? Great. How can we make it still good, but easier to use, but simpler and more cost effective, right? So I think that's our approach when it comes to building literally any kind of system within the company, not just go to market, by the way.
And when you say, because I've heard you say this as well, that you always start with the fundamentals before adding the complexity. So when you say starting with the fundamentals, do you mean starting by knowing what problem you're trying to solve? Or for example, obviously I have this manual process and I want to automate this. Like where is the starting point where you say, okay, I could build a system for this? And what do you consider to be the fundamental?
Yeah, we're just talking about cold email, cold outreach strictly. That's exactly what I meant, right? Like you have to start from like understanding, like your market, where they are standing by, where how sophisticated they are, how do you want to position, what offer do you want to roll out, all that kind of stuff, right? The basic infrastructure, make sure your inbox in warm up, whatever it might be, have a clear sales process in place before you start all this cold email stuff. Like just do that first, right? Before you look into fancy things like intent triggers and personalizations and things like that, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of personalization. Like every single email we send out at the agency is personalized. Every single email. And we send literally millions of emails every single month, right? They're all personalized, right? But if you're doing it for the first time, I would say don't let that be the shiny object syndrome for you, right? And I think one analogy that I made recently, but I think it's a very applicable for all this like intent triggers or like personalization is this. With personalization, it could probably 1.3, 1.5, sometimes even 2x your campaign, right? So let's say if you have 10 booked meetings every single day, 1.3, 1.5, 2x, that could have been, 13, 15, 20 meetings coming in. But if you have zero meetings coming in, what is 1.5, 1.3, 2x of zero? Still zero, right? So your job is to figure out how to get from 0 to 1 first before you go from 1 to 1.5, 1.3, 2x. If that makes sense.
When you think about personalization, what exactly is effective personalization within cold email? Because personalization could be calling out something random on their website, on their LinkedIn profile, but how do you make sure that it's contextual and relevant personalization?
Yeah. So honestly, when it comes to personalization, it really comes down to two level, right? It comes down to either the company level or the personal level. I'll say most of the time, personalization does work in like the B2B professional space. It's gonna have to come down in like the company level. Right. So a lot of time, just go out there, have an AI agents that can do research on the company, browse their websites the simplest way, browse their tech stack, see if there's any, like events they have going on. Are they, like recently had a raise or make any news headline, right? And connect your product to it, right? Personalization is nothing without relevancy, right? So you can, this is something that everybody calls in the cold email space, which is true, right? You can just be like, hey, saw you went to, XYZ high school. So by the way, here's my product that can help you make more money. It just makes no sense, right? Hey, saw your company located in California. And yeah, by the way, here's my lead generation cold email agency. Right? It makes no sense, right? So personalization means, yes, like make the email a little bit about them, about the company, where they are at, but it has to tie to the relevancy on the kind of product you are selling as well.
Personalization is very hyped up, and I'm also a big supporter of the fact that relevance is more important than personalization. And personally, I just feel that personalization is used to increase relevancy. And without that component, then obviously the personalization is pretty much useless. We sort of move into AI now. How are you using AI at the agency for cold email?
We use AI for almost like everything now, aside from the creative aspect. Yeah, we use AI to help us with, building the infrastructures, giving us like a weekly, daily report, like what's the next action item that we need to do, right? And then we're looking to building agents that can execute all these tasks for us as well. But for now, like we're just asking all the AI to give us the report. Soon enough, we will be able to do it with all these agents that are coming out. Yeah, things like even like building a lead list, like building like a data set. That is something that we're exploring to see how we can have an agent doing for us as well. The one thing that I have like the hardest time trying to work on this, and no matter what prompt I use, no matter what tools I use, is just the creative aspect, like the positioning, the offer, the copywriting aspect as well. Like those are just a few things that, man, like we just haven't been able to crack yet, right? So those are where like human strategy, like human mind has to come into place.
We're mentioning the term AI. What exactly are the tools that you're using, or that you even recommend most people should be using right now? Are you just talking about Claude, ChatGPT, maybe Claude Code even? What exactly are you referring to that you're using the most, I guess, and that is a super helpful tool?
I'll give you like a business level perspective, and and hopefully it kind of relates to the cold email answer as well, right? So here's a quick like AI 101 crash course for everyone who's so overwhelmed with all this stuff going on and they just don't know what's happening, right? So to me, I like to, at this point of recording, I would say there are 3 or 4 different layers of AI, right? So the first layer of AI is chatbots, right? This is just the typical ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, like literally whatever tool you want to use. Just ask it a question, it will tell you the answer, right? some pros and cons, right? Some AI like Gemini is better for things that if you want to look up stuff like on Google, because obviously Gemini is built by Google, so it's engined by like the whole like Google together, right? So if you were to search something on Google, like, hey, what is like the time right now in I don't know in Europe, then Chat like Gemini will be able to do it. I think Claude is a little bit more advanced in terms of reasoning, so I would use Claude for that. So that's the first layer of AI. Just be able to have a conversation with them. The second layer of AI is almost like an analysis type deal. Like you would upload like a CSV file, for example, right? And it will can read it, it will do stuff for you. You ask the question about this, you upload an image, it can, like generate an image for you, that kind of stuff. So a little bit more advanced than just use a chatbot, right? It was able to do small creative output based on your instruction, right? Creative or just some admin tasks like analyzing documentation, for example. The third layer of AI to me is essentially now we're getting into like the AI agent territory. So AI agent is all I would say all agents that can execute tasks for you, right? So this is where we start getting into like Claude Cowork type deal or Claude Code as well. So agents means that you say, hey, this is like I guess something like, hey, go on my LinkedIn profile and like engage with other people's posts, right? And what the agent can do is like it will open up a new tab on my browser, Google Chrome, whatever I'm doing. It will navigate to LinkedIn. Obviously, I have to log in into LinkedIn already, and it will browse through the LinkedIn. It will just do all this stuff for me, right? So I can just have that tab aside as I'm doing, like my other day work, and the agent will constantly finding posts on LinkedIn. It will write comments on it, right? Now, obviously, the caveat is you have to prompt it correctly. I was gonna write some dumb stuff for you, right? So that's AI agent. Now, yeah, if you're curious about what AI agent I use, I would say Claude Cowork or Claude Code that can help you build code, build products for you. So those are what I call AI agents. Now, the last layer, which is something that I'm really excited about, a little bit scared as well, I would say, is autonomous agents. So this is where we get into the open claw territory, and I believe Manus AI is also getting there as well. So Manus, if you haven't heard, they recently got an acquisition from Facebook, I believe. Oh, sorry, Meta. Yeah, Meta, Facebook, something. Um, Claude Cowork, I believe, is getting there as well, but I don't think it's there yet. So autonomous AI agent is essentially AI agent that can execute tasks while you are asleep. Like with agent, you have to prompt it a task. Your computer has to be on, and then it will do it. If you don't prompt anything, it will not do it. But autonomous agent, you can say something like, "Hey, I'm going to bed now. Every hour, just go on my LinkedIn. If there's an interesting post, just leave a comment on it. I'm going to bed." Right? As you go to bed, the autonomous agent will be able to do all that stuff for you, right? Um, I was more excited about that because obviously we're trying to build our like roles that all this AI agent can do for us now that can handle maybe like the company finance, maybe can handle maybe like I don't know, like LinkedIn comments, things like that, right? Just get more visibility on LinkedIn, become my social media managers, and maybe like just read through email for me as I am sleeping and hopefully can respond it to me as well, right? But yeah, I don't think it's quite there yet. I think the only company that able to do that right now is OpenClaw for obvious reason, and this is why you get all the hype about people like buying MacBook Minis and just to have them run on it, right? Because what they do is they leave the MacBook Mini on, and then that way you essentially have a computer running all the time, and the agent can execute all the tasks for you, right? Now the scary part with that is the security part, right? I've seen a lot of horror posts where people, all this AI agent, it posts your social security number, posts your bank information, online. Like there's literally posts about like obviously like if you haven't heard, like AI agent, they build their own like social media that only for like AI agents can interact with one another, and they start sharing like all of these like owners like secret, right? Like, hey, this guy is being like this guy's being mean to me today, so here's his social security number. Like they post all of that in social media too, right? So you're not careful with it, that's the that's the security part's gonna come in, right? So obviously, if you're starting out as a business owner, I think the autonomous AI agent could really help you as your co-pilot, as your almost like your co-founder in a way, in a sense that you don't have to perhaps like hire too many employees and cut your profit margin that way. But for somebody like a big organization, right? And this is the part where huge enterprise companies are having trouble with, is how to integrate all of that agents into the business, right? There's a huge risk when it comes to security. I'll tell you a secret. When I was working at, I believe, Cisco at that point, and I think at this point, GPT was on like GPT-4 or like GPT-3 already. I think that was back in like early 2023. And at that point, the whole company basically banned ChatGPT. Like, we are not allowed to use AI. Not because the company didn't want people to use AI in the day-to-day work, but simply because of security reason, right? So integrating all of these like autonomous agent into your business, into code email, into go-to-market, sure, it's good. But if you are not careful, if you're not, I guess, like instructed, you're not prompting it, you're not building it correctly, it could cause a lot more damage for you than good. That makes sense. I know it's like a really, really long answer, but to me, those are like the 4 layers of AI. So each of them has different use cases, right? So depending on where you are at the stage of the company, pick and choose, right? They all could be very useful.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect answer. And I think it was a perfect crash course for all those people who are, I guess, not as knowledgeable about what is even out there. It's so hard to even just stay on track and stay updated. You know, there seems to be a new update, something new is coming out there, a new layer even of AI is coming out there all the time. So I think a lot of people just feel overwhelmed and they feel that they're behind. You see a lot of people and a lot of companies posting all these complex workflows and the ways that they're using all these different layers of AI, specifically for cold email, for go-to-market. And a lot of people just feel overwhelmed. You know, if I don't know how to do all these things, can I still see results, or do I need to become some sort of an expert at using AI now in order to be able to see results from cold email?
Short answer is yes, you can. Again, this is what we had the conversation about, going back to the fundamental, right? You don't need any fancy stuff, you know, avoid shiny object syndrome. And to me, my mindset sometimes is like, I mean, I'm a pioneer, but a lot of times it's like, you know what? You guys can go out there and experimenting like with all these AI tools, like maybe let it ruin your financial situations and learn all your mistake, and then post about it on LinkedIn, and I'll take a look and I learn from it and I'll decide for myself if I want to use it or not. Right. So, you know, you can also have the same mindset too. Look, you're not gonna be too late, right? We're still in a very, very earlier stage, right? If you want to be a pioneer, if you want to, you know, like obviously have a service or a product that can like sell all this AI workflow, sure, jump into it, right? Let me know your thought. But you know, if you're just a business owner like you or me, sit back, see what they got going on.
Yeah, sit back, look at all the posts, see how you can learn, watch a couple podcasts, and see what other people are doing, see what works, see what doesn't. And then I think something that I've definitely become better at is also just trying new things. Every time I see something that could potentially benefit my business, you know, I'm just like trying it out. If it doesn't work, if I don't find a way to make it work, I might drop it off, see how I can optimize it, going back to what you said previously, but just trying as many things as possible. Now, just to sort of step away then from the topic of AI, going back into more broadly cold email, you've been doing this for many, many years, and you've also worked with dozens, hundreds of companies as well. So how do you think the industry has changed? What do you think has been, I guess, even to narrow it down a bit more, one of the biggest changes or shifts in the industry that people need to be aware of and people should be focusing on the most as a result of that shift?
The shift in cold email. Okay, before we get to that, let's knock one thing out of the way, right? Cold email is never gonna die. So nobody, whatever people say, you know, cold email is still gonna be alive. There's a little joke that I like to make is, you know, one day we might have a new channel called Cold Neuralink. You know, like where Elon Musk chip finally works and you can start sending cold DM to from one person's mind to the other. I think that is when maybe cold email will truly die. Imagine one day, you know, if that was to happen, just remember that Simon would be the first cold Neuralink company out. Cold Neuralink agency. There you go. How did the space involve and where it's going into? Obviously, it to give you like a quick like history of cold email. It obviously start with manual prospecting, manual cold email, right? And it worked extremely well back then, right? Because the process was very tedious, right? It's hard to automate, right? So it's a lot easier. There's less regulations, easy to land in the inbox, right? And then we went into like an automation stage where this is where instantly, smartly roll out our products and people can start sending like thousands, not millions of cold email in like a day or two, right? I think that was when, if you got into it, it's not printing, like just leads for you, right? Because you transitioning from like a manual to like an automated fashion. Now, because of that, of course, Google and Outlook start to roll out a lot of policies, right? There's even like some like email server, like if you hear about like Zoho like banned cold email completely. And if you're in the space, it's called the Zoho apocalypse back in the day, right? There's a lot of like, not as, in a sense, obviously Google and Outlook are the two biggest servers that people use. I don't think they're gonna ban cold email completely, but they are banning like bad practices in terms of cold email, right? So nowadays, yeah, you can send cold email, just make it look good, right? And this is the part where we mentioned like personalization earlier, right? Like personalization is not gonna help you, like get more leads, for example, but it for sure will help you land the inbox better, right? Because this is when deliverability, like AI is gonna look into it and be like, all right, these guys are sending a little bit different emails, right? It's not the same spammy messages that they send to like thousands of other people. I think that was where we were about like 2-3 years ago, like sorry, not even two, like 1 or 2 years ago. Nowadays, a lot of AI agents are coming out. I think we're getting to the stage where it's an awkward stage. It's an awkward stage because it makes things more efficient, but it also makes things more expensive, right? Costs are rising, right? And I'm saying this obviously because I run a cold email agency. I don't want to scare anybody, but our operation expense has been rising like crazy for the past few months, right? With all these new AI agents that are coming in and things like that. It's a little bit scary, I would say, because with cost increases, obviously at first we were very excited that, we can do things more efficient, right? We can take care of all this automated stuff. And quite frankly, our quality of work got a lot better as well, right? It allowed us to focus on the other areas that I mentioned earlier in the podcast that we're not able to bring AI in just yet, like the creative aspect, right? The communication, the customer support type deal, right? But I think this is where operations and project management will come into place, right? Like we have all these agents rolling out for us. I think the challenge at this moment is you need to be able to really nail down on your operations and your processes and your system so that it can be efficient and so that it's also cost effective for you as well. From just like a purely cold email outreach perspective, right? Does it make sense for the ROI? Like, how can you build out the process? How can I manage all this AI agent together, mix that along with all the human aspect, all the creative aspect, right? The company strategy, the sales process, right? The company direction, are they looking to expand? Like all that kind of stuff comes together, right? So you can see that the operations and the project management start to come in. So yeah, I think we're in the little bit of an awkward stage, or we call it the exploration stage as well, where just a bunch of like costs are rising. People expect, hey, because things are easier, things are simpler, you click a button, it's done, it should be cheaper. It's not. It's more and more and more expensive. So you could go other direction, right? You can stay to where you are, right? Just stick with the fundamental, like we talk about this whole podcast, save some cost that way. You have fun. You can build some crazy workflow with AI, right? And it can do all of this stuff for you, but fair warning, it'll be very expensive. Now, obviously, to me, when we get through this exploring stage, like this whole awkward stage, I think it's like a very exciting stage, right? I think this is where people are going to start to figure it out. People are going to start rolling out agents that can actually optimize like costs for them, right? It's actually going to make things a lot simpler, right? There perhaps maybe like an AI agent that can, like help you scrape all the data on the web that you don't have to refer to like multiple sources anymore, that kind of stuff. You don't have to go through like enrichment and all that kind of stuff anymore. I would say right now we're not there yet, but we are very close to being there, right? So the exciting stage is...
So if someone watching it could be a cold email agency, could also be a B2B business, and they're using cold email, and they want to prepare for this new stage that's coming, the new exciting stage, what would you tell them to invest the most time in today in order to be as best prepared for what is to come, and they want to continue seeing results with cold email?
For sure, it's the fundamental. That is never going to go away. No, and it's the same idea, right? Like you want to build okay, so kind of similar but related. For a business owner, right? You can expect to hire somebody and they would solve all the problems for you, right? So let's say I have a problem with finance. So you can expect to hire a finance guy to come in and solve the finance problem for you, right? Like, sure, the finance guy is gonna maybe pinpoint out like a few problems for you to solve. Like, hey, like they have issue with this, issue with that. What is going on? Let's look under the hood, look at the fundamental. Same thing with cold email, right? Same thing with all this go-to-market stuff, right? Like you can expect to have all these AI agents to come in and solve all the problem, automatically bring you in leads, right? You have to be able to understand the fundamental, the strategy, the psychology, the creative, the technical aspect of everything so that whatever AI is coming up can perform efficiently, right? Like there will be, well, I don't want to say that, there might be, but there will be no AI, at least in the market, where you have to do is just sit there, click a button, and all of a sudden it understands your market. All of a sudden it understands your product, and all of a sudden it just bring you 25,000 super high intent leads ready to buy in a single click of a button, right? Now again, maybe at some point we'll get there, but for now, I would say if someone want to get into the space, you have to understand the fundamental first: how marketing works, how cold email works, how psychology works, how go-to-market works, before you look into bringing all this AI coming in to solve all this problem for you. So if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, there's no point of bringing in like a tool that you don't even know what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I also think that the fundamentals are never going to change, regardless of how many AI tools come out there, whatever gets released. I don't want to say never. You always need to adapt your knowledge and see, obviously, how you can improve even on the fundamental level. Once again, I don't know if this sort of ties into the previous question as well, but just to wrap up, if someone watching just wanted to take away at least one thing from this entire conversation, and if you had to tell them what that one thing is that they absolutely need to be doing, what do you think that should be?
Be very obsessed with processes, systems. I think that's the mindset that I always had during the agency. I was a very obsessive person when it comes to building processes and system. Take that to cold email. Take that to building, like executive assistant AI agents that can, like check the emails for you, how the process is like, like again, through the whole podcast, we talk about what is processes, what is system, right? It's just if this do that, if that do this, right? Be very obsessive, optimize that, and then start to build off that across your entire business and on the micro level when it comes to cold email as well. There's copywriting process, there's lead building process, the infrastructure processes. Be very obsessed. Just be very obsessed with processes and systems.
Perfect. I love that. Wesley, this has been super valuable, man. Really appreciate you taking the time to share everything. I think the engineering perspective on cold email and generally speaking on running a business in the lead gen space is very interesting. And it's something that we don't get to hear that often. So for anyone who's watching, maybe they want to learn more about you, learn more about SciMate, potentially work with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. Our company website is cymate.io, so cymate.io. And you can look me up on LinkedIn. So that's going to be Hey Wesley. And I also have a YouTube channel as well that I just started. So if you can hit that subscribe button, that would be amazing. I talk about cold email, but sooner or later, I'll start talking about like all this business fundamental as well. So you can find me on YouTube at Hi Wesley. So Hi and then Wesley.
Perfect. And we're going to make it super easy for everyone watching. We're going to link everything in the description below as well. So if you want to find out more about Wesley, you can find him in the description. And for everyone watching, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe. We have a lot of other episodes coming out as well with other experts in the space. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Wesley, thank you very much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.